Hello and welcome to Michael's Minty Music for today. Today we review ABBA's 1974 album Waterloo. It's pretty good. Their first major album that really went big, especially in Europe. It wasn't as popular in the US, but some of the tracks were still popular. So this was their first real major hit album. This is the original track listing, and these are the tracks I added to my playlist. 6 out of 12, exactly half. This album is pretty good, although it does have a handful of songs that are rather boring and not especially interesting in my opinion. Side 1 isn't that great, but it doesn't disappoint too badly. Side 2, though, is actually pretty good. The first 3 tracks are all good, and they flow quite well. The main thing here, overall, is that even though there's some simple, sort of boring pop tracks on this album, they don't interrupt the flow, and they're never so bad that you actively don't want to listen to them. So, in general, even stuff like songs that aren't really interesting aren't actively bad, so it's kind of a middle-of-the-road album in general. There were no singles released before the album, but the big hit here was obviously the title track, Waterloo, along with Honey Honey, I believe. My favorite track here is Watch Out. It's a lower energy rock track. It fits real well in with the rest of the more pop-sounding tracks, and it sounds pretty great on its own. So yeah, that is definitely my favorite one off of this album. Now, I rank this album 4th out of all of ABBA's albums. It's basically the best middle-of-the-road album, in my opinion. There's the 3 in the middle that this is the top of. It's certainly better than some of their albums that are just sort of good, like Ring Ring and Super Trouper, but it's definitely not as good as their best albums, ABBA the Album, and Voulez-Vous. It's good overall, but a lot of the songs off of this album are not particularly interesting. They're just kind of generic pop songs. So this album is good, but not really anything special. The flow of the album is alright, but it is definitely held back by the fact that a lot of the songs are just sort of generic. They're not anything really out of the park. They all sound kind of similar, and they all are alright. Now, this is not my favorite album from 1974. That goes to Queen's Sheer Heart Attack, which is a lot better and has a lot more variety, in my opinion. That one is definitely, I like that one more than Waterloo. Next up is ABBA's 1980 album, Super Trouper. It's good, but it's not one of their best albums, as I just mentioned there. Still, it's got some good tracks on it, and it's definitely got some good hits there, so it's relatively interesting to review. So stay tuned for that, and stay minty.